My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stéphane.
Right. All right, good afternoon. Just keeping on that theme, the Secretary General laid a wreath this morning at the Peacekeepers Memorial to honor the more than 4,000 women and men who have lost their lives since 1948 while serving under the UN flag. Also at a virtual ceremony, Mr. Guterres awarded the Dag Hammarskjöld Medal to 129 police and civilian peacekeepers and military peacekeepers, of course, who lost their lives in 2020 in the first months of 2021. In his remarks, he said that the challenges and threats faced by peacekeepers are immense and noted that despite COVID-19 across all our missions, peacekeepers have not only been adapting to continue to deliver their core tasks, but they're also assisting national and community efforts to fight the virus. And speaking on this year's theme, which is the road to lasting peace, leveraging the power of youth for peace and security, the Secretary General stressed that in countries where our missions operate, peace cannot be achieved without active participation of young people. And he also presented the 2020 Military Gender Advocate of the Year Award to 32-year-old military gender advisor, Major Stéphane Nyaboga, who is from Kenya. She served in the recently completed UN-AU hybrid mission in Darfur. And also this morning, Secretary General participated in an online event co-hosted by the UN's Verified initiative, bringing business leaders together to discuss how to step up global efforts to ensure vaccine equity and ramp up the fight against the virus. The Secretary General noted that how science has delivered safe and effective vaccines in record time, but there is a large and growing vaccine gap between rich and poor countries. Just 10 countries have administered more than 75% of all vaccine doses, he said. Mr. Guterres added that this is not only unjust, but it is self-defeating and dangerous for everyone. He also stressed that fast and equitable vaccination is the only way to prevent new and more dangerous variants from emerging and wreaking further havoc in rich and poor countries alike. The COVID-19 cannot be beaten by one country at a time. It can strike back. The world must act with resolution and in solidarity to overcome the virus. He also spotlighted the role of the private sector, which he said has been central to every breakthrough since the start of the pandemic on vaccines, medicines, diagnostics, etc. He commended the many companies that have acknowledged this by putting people before profits. Now is the time to put the private sector to play in its full potential in ending this global catastrophe. Those remarks were shared with you. I will skip updating you on Mali because I think you heard at length from the USG. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, our humanitarian colleagues said they are closely monitoring the developments in Goma in North Kivu after last night's decision by the authorities in the DRC to evacuate 10 districts as a precaution following the eruption of Volcano Nyiragongo. Evacuations are reportedly underway with tens of thousands of people leaving Goma. This is happening against a backdrop of an already high needs in North Kivu. 44% of all 5 million internally displaced people there in DRC are in North Kivu, and about a third of that population is also severely food insecure. Just a note on the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, because we've been asked, and I can tell you that we're following with concern the developments in the Armenia-Azerbaijan border. We urge all relevant actors to exercise restraint to avoid any action that may escalate tensions further. We also understand that negotiations are ongoing. All outstanding bilateral issues should be resolved peacefully through dialogue and diplomatic means. And you will have heard from Tor Venesland, the UN Special Coordinator to the Middle East peace process, who today briefed the Security Council on the recent hostilities between Palestinian militants in Gaza and Israel, adding that the cessation of hostilities is holding. He highlighted the $95 million humanitarian flash appeal, which you heard from Lynn Hastings, and reiterated the Secretary General's appeal for international community to work with the UN on developing an integrated, robust support package. Mr. Venesland told the Council that it is the lack of proverbial light at the end of the tunnel of a political horizon after decades of conflicts that kills people's hopes and provides space for those not interested in sustainable peace. He said that only through negotiations that end the occupation and create a viable two-state solution? Can we hope to bring a definitive end to those senseless and costly cycles of violence? Council members also heard from Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, who recently spent a few days in Gaza, where more than 250 people were killed and thousands more injured. He commended the work done by UNRWA staff in Gaza, who opened the schools they run there to the thousands of people who had been displaced by the escalation of violence. And update, not a good one, from Ethiopia. Our humanitarian coordinator there, Catherine Swozi, has condemned the arbitrary arrests, beatings, and other forms of ill treatment by soldiers of more than 200 people during the military raids of internal displacement settings in the Tigray region during the night of May 24th. According to our colleagues, the affected Tesei and Adi Wufinto sites in Shira town are hosting a combined of 12,000 displaced people. Ms. Swozi called for the immediate release of all those who have been arbitrarily arrested. She also said that serious violations of international humanitarian and human rights law must be promptly investigated and the perpetrators brought to justice. We, along with our partners, are ready to engage with military commanders to ensure protection of civilians. On the broader humanitarian situation in Tigray, access remains a challenge. Most of the central zone, the most populated in the area, and that's about 1.8 million people, remains largely inaccessible. Where humanitarian workers have reached people, the situation is dire, including shortages of food, dysfunctional water systems, lack of electricity, and lack of health services. Food insecurity is also alarming, with a high risk of mass severe acute malnutrition looming in the next few months, if not addressed. Is looming in the next few months, if not addressed immediately. Humanitarian partners are gradually scaling up their response. Nearly 500,000 people were reached with food assistance last week, bringing the number of people reached since March 27th to more than 2.2 million out of the targeted 5.2 million. So we still have quite a large gap. We continue to call for safe, unimpeded, and sustained access to scale up the humanitarian response to help all people in need. More urgent funding is needed. And WHO said today that Africa urgently needs at least 20 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in the next 6 weeks to get second doses to all the people who received the first dose to meet the 8 to 12 week window between doses. In addition, WHO said today it needs more than 200 million doses of any vaccine approved for emergency use by WHO so that Africa can vaccinate 10% of its population by September of this year. This follows a call made by Director General Tedros at the World Health Assembly earlier this week for all member states to support massive vaccination campaign. And to date, 28 million COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered in Africa, which represents less than 2 doses administered per 100 people. And several countries in Latin America and the Caribbean received shipments of Covax vaccines this week. St. Vincent's and the Grenadines, where our team are supporting authorities following the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano. The country received more than 21,000 doses. And in the Caribbean, in other parts of the Caribbean, 21,000 doses of vaccine arrived in Grenada. And meanwhile, in El Salvador, they have received their 96,000 doses. And in Argentina, received 2 shipments of Covax vaccine totaling more than 860,000 doses. Bolivia received a third of its shipment, and that's more than 100,000 doses. Latin America and the Caribbean have now received nearly 14 million Covax-backed doses to date. We, along with our partners, are working with countries in their national vaccination campaign. Our friends at the UN Environment Program in Nairobi have reports out today released jointly by the World Economic Forum and other partners. And in total investments in nature, $8.1 trillion is needed between now and 2050 to successfully tackle interlinked climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation. The report entitled State of Finance for Nature also calls for annual investments to reach $536 billion annually by 2050. The report urges governments, financial institutions, and businesses to overcome this investment gap by placing nature at the heart of the economic decision-making in the future. Lastly, tomorrow, I will not be in this room. Mr. Haq will be briefing from his undisclosed location. However, at 9 a.m. in this very room, Dmitry Polyansky, the first Deputy Permanent Representative of the Russian Federation, will be here to talk to you. Let's see what the postman has brought in. A statement on Somalia. The Secretary General welcomes the agreement reached by the federal government of Somalia and federal member state leaders on the implementation of the 17 September electoral model as an outcome of the summit convened by the Prime Minister, Mohamed Hussein Roble. The Secretary General urges all stakeholders to swiftly implement the agreement as a critical step towards the holding of a consensual and transparent electoral process without further delay. Mr. Guterres reiterates the importance of dialogue and consensus to resolve any issue that may arise during implementation and calls on the swift establishment of credible election management bodies at the federal and state levels to conduct the process. He also reiterates the commitment of the UN to support the people and government of Somalia in the implementation of the 17 September electoral model and holding of a timely process. I think that's it. It is now your turn. Edie, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Steph. I have two questions. First, on the conflict in Gaza, the UN Human Rights Chief, Michelle Bachelet, said today that the Israeli actions in Gaza may constitute war crimes, and she called on Israel to allow an independent investigation. Does the Secretary General support those views?
Secretary General has nothing to add to what Ms. Bachelet says, which is within her mandate.
Secondly, on Mali, there's been an announcement that the Prime Minister and the President have been released, and that the 2020 coup leader has resumed control of the country. The whereabouts of the President and the Prime Minister are apparently still not known. What would the Secretary General like to see now, especially in light of the coup leader resuming control of Mali?
Well, first of all, we very much welcome the release of the civilian leaders, but we very much remain concerned at the overall situation in the country, and especially the political vacuum that has been created by the resignation of the president and the prime minister. I think what is important and what our colleagues on the ground stress is to see a resumption of the implementation of the transition roadmap, a restoration of the civilian-led transition, which enjoys the support of the people of Mali. We continue to work on the ground with ECOWAS. Our special representative, Mr. Wane, joined the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, who was there for ECOWAS at a series of meetings over the last couple of days, and we will continue to work very closely with them. Okay, Majid, I think you had a question.
Yes, Stéphane, thank you very much. My question is on the situation in Iraq. In the past 24 hours, Iran-backed militias stormed Green Zone, which is where it's housing the Prime Minister's office, government offices, and the President's office. Green Zone is the heart of power, political power in Iraq. And these militias almost took it over and attacked it, and they are still threatening it. Any reaction to this, and also any reaction for the adoption of the resolution on UNAMI? Thank you. This morning.
I mean, you know, we always welcome resolutions by the Security Council. So the resolution on Iraq was adopted. It places a few requirements on the Secretariat, notably to report back on the issue of support to the elections, and we will, of course, do that. I think those latest reports from Baghdad are concerning, to say the least, and we would want to see calm restored in order for the government to be able to operate freely and without any threat. I need to just announce to you that Assistant Secretary General Miroslav Diencha from the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs arrived in Haiti yesterday to review the progress of the UN team in Haiti, including how the UN office is contributing to the situation in Haiti, and also to hold talks with the authorities and civil society. James Reinl.
Thank you, Steph. I've got two questions. One, continuing what you were just talking about on Iraq, and then a second one about COVID. First, on Iraq. So the mandate has been expanded of the mission to include election monitoring, and there isn't a whole lot of time until October. So I'm wondering if you guys at this stage have got an idea of by how many additional staff, different, more UN feet on the ground you're going to have in the country by the time the election takes place?
Sure. I mean, the resolution does outline added responsibilities for the mission, including on the issue of elections. We of course abide by the resolution, and as I mentioned to Majid, now that we have the exact text, we'll report back to the Security Council on how it will be implemented. I think within the next 30 days, as required. And we will, and of course, we had done. There's some preliminary planning and done. So we already have some ideas of what that added level of work and participation will look like.
Thanks so much. And I'll just do the one on coronavirus as well. US President Joe Biden has requested another investigation into the origins of the disease and exploring this theory of the laboratory in Wuhan, China, as being the source of the virus. The UN World Health Organization study already concluded that it most likely resulted from animal to human transmission. So my question is, in the UN's view, is it a fair and reasonable question to ask about this?
There is an ongoing process with the World Health Organization, which is not yet concluded. I know our colleagues in Geneva at WHO are reviewing the recommendations from the virus origin studies report at the technical level. The technical teams will prepare a proposal for the next studies that will need to be carried out, and will present them to the Director General for his consideration. He'll then work with the member states on next steps. I think, as Tedros has said, further studies will be needed in a range of areas, including on the early detection of cases and clusters, and the potential roles of animal markets, transmission via the food chain, and laboratory incident hypothesis. But, there is WHO will do what it can, but it obviously will always need the cooperation of member states. Okay, let's see if there are any more questions. Otherwise, we will hand it over to our good friend Brendan. Maggie, and then we'll go to Brendan.
Steph?
Maggie.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't get unmuted. Question, does the Secretary General have any comment on that Shell oil case yesterday out of The Hague on the reducing their carbon by 45%? It was a big landmark case.
Sure. I mean, listen, we've seen the case, and I don't want to get into commenting on court cases, but there have been other developments, whether in courts, whether in boardrooms recently. And I think what we're seeing are more and more signs that the transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy is gathering pace, because it's what science demands. I mean, it's what every report that this organization has put out, and others and other scientists have put out. But it's also what will drive forward our quest for better jobs, stronger economies, a healthier planet, healthier people, and to save us from this abyss that the Secretary Generals and others have talked to, if we stand by and do nothing. Okay, I will leave it at that. Mr. Varma, I see you on the screen. Let's speak so we can hear you.